All right, now, everybody. Quiet, listen to me. We're going to start a show. Now, some of you people have been with me before. You know it's going to be a tough grind, but we're going to have a show.
Oh, thank you. Well, I'm humbled and overwhelmed by your recorded applause, and I must tell you that it is quite the Monday. We have many folks coming through our lives today, which is always better. Sarah Kendzior in hour two, the award-winning, best-selling author and journalist. She'll be here as well. In just because I'm in hour two, in description, I'll tell you that Jessica Denson will be here, the activist who maintains that impeachment is the answer for a lawless president. We'll talk with her. And a major accident at LaGuardia. The airport was closed. It may still be closed. Is it, Kim? I don't know if it's still closed or not.
Let me check it.
Kim, do you know yet? Or
Kim, how are you? Let me check it. Kim, it was closed the last time I looked, but let me look it now.
It was closed last time.
I blame you.
Well, maybe it's my fault,
reopened. It's now reopened.
It's now reopened. Very good, Kim.
Kim, how are you?
It was a simple Google.
Google it.
And it was done. But the point is, how could this have happened, and what may happen as the world of air travel gets a bit more complex? Patrick Wild joins us. He's our aviation expert at the end of hour two. In hour one, it is Gary Dietrich, our political ninja from iHeart Radio and also from the CBS television network. So we will get to him as well. The major news, thank you for being here. My thank yous are a little cramped today. I've got so much to get to. So I apologize if I seem a little rushed. But I'm excited to have everybody here. Please tell your friends. The show is on live, 2:30 Eastern Time, every day. We go till, I don't know, 4:20, 4:30 sometimes Eastern. We try to get in everything we can. I do want to recognize somebody who's sitting in with us today. My dear friend, and Tony's dear friend, a refugee from the world of iHeart Radio. Now he's in a robust world on his own. How about it from Mondo, everybody? Mondo is, give us a little, just, a quick hello. Thank you, Mondo. Yeah. Mondo is wonderful. Mondo, with the increasing pinch that iHeart Radio is putting on Tony. You know, Tony's first got to answer the bat beam when it goes up from KFI Radio.
I know.
You have to. Yeah. Even though, as I've detailed before, he makes more money here, actually, than they pay him at iHeart.
What?
But he gets benefits and a bunch of other stuff at iHeart that we can't pay. So anyway, the point is, the Mark Thompson Show welcomes Mondo. Look, you get your own graphic, Mondo. Very nice. We need someone to ride herd over a lot of the stuff that's on the show when Tony can't be here. In fact, Tony has to leave early today, and it'll be it's an issue. So we invited Mondo, and you know, Mondo also is in this world where you have a side hustle here and a side hustle there. So we're just hoping that our side hustle can be shoehorned into the rest of your side hustles. Mondo, you think maybe it can happen? Am I right?
Yeah, definitely, because I love the hustle.
I got. He loves the hustle. I'd like that as a drop if I can get it. I love the hustle. All right. Welcome, Mondo, and welcome, everybody. Big news worldwide and in this country, so let's get into it.
Yeah. The Mark Thompson Show.
I think the major news of the moment is that an ultimatum that was issued over the weekend, which seemed to be an extraordinary one, which is essentially open the Strait of Hormuz or else. That was the ultimatum issued by the president. It has now been modified. Donald Trump has backed off. And I'll tell you something here that I haven't shared a lot prior, but I shared it with friends privately. I don't know why I didn't share it with you, because as you're about to hear, it's very shareable. But the reason I mention it is that I got a bunch of texts today, this morning, saying he did what you said he'd do. And I got a bunch of these. And I realized, oh, I should tell you what I told all these other people who are texting me this morning. The plan I had for Donald Trump, I get this. He says, this is exactly what you said was going to happen. Trump did exactly what you said he'd do. The only exit that I see for Donald Trump, everyone's talking about, and we've talked about on the show, declare victory and get out of there. And he's got to wrap this up. It must be, and it is, I think, beginning to hit him that this was a colossal error. That the way in which this was done, the illusion he was under, that he could somehow knock out Iranian leadership and bring about some change in Iran that would be advantageous to America, that would, I don't know, derail their nuclear program, derail their political aspirations in terms of a extreme radical religious doctrine, et cetera. It's all absurd. I mean, it just doesn't really, it doesn't really hold any water. That he got drunk on what happened in Venezuela, on the ease with which they bombed in June the Iranian nuclear facility after a 12-day run there in Iran. The Iranians, in a choreographed response, seemed okay with it, meaning there was no real repercussion. He didn't pay a price. I feel drunk on that. He let himself get talked into this. So, everybody's talked about, and of course it's been spoken of, I think, from the very beginning, declare victory and leave. That's one exit. I don't know that you can do that because it's great that you leave, but as long as the Iranians feel, hey, we want to make sure this doesn't happen again, you know, we had Trita Parsi on, and he talked about that that's not going to be sufficient, that they're going to continue, the Iranians, to make the pain something that the Americans feel, to teach them a lesson. The Israelis and the Americans don't do this again. And the leadership in Iran now is far more radical than the leadership that we took out. So my suggestion was that Trump do a version of that, declare victory and leave. And here's the version. The version is, I'm excited to announce that through backroom negotiations, the Iranians have agreed not to pursue a policy of nuclear enrichment, and they have agreed to terms that we are comfortable with, and as a result, the Americans will be coming home, and we can wrap up this adventure, what do you call it, excursion in Iran. Now, the Iranians are going to say, what? We didn't make any deal with you. We didn't negotiate with you. We didn't even return your calls. What are you talking about? And Trump will say, and only Trump could say this. Of course, the Iranians are saying this, and all I'm telling you is this actually happened. Jared Kushner and my negotiating team, they were able, Witkoff and Rubio, to navigate and negotiate with the Iranians in top secret. And I probably shouldn't even be telling you this, but I'm going to tell you. We weren't supposed to talk about it, but I'm going to tell you that this negotiation was successful and now the war is over. That's the way he gets out of it. Otherwise, I don't see how this doesn't turn into the same kind of quagmire with American casualties as well that you got into in Iraq, and the quicksand is real. Play for me, if you will, Professor Marandi on the U.S. preparations for invasion. This is cut 8. You have it up there in the gate. This is the other side. If you decide you want to go on to Karg Island, you want to begin some kind of stronger presence along the lines of what you think will make the Iranians cry uncle, you're in real trouble. Here's the professor.
Or maybe he won't even attack. Or then maybe he will further escalate. Who knows what he will do? But regardless what happens, I think things are going to get worse. And then we have the added issue of the U.S. preparing itself for invading Iranian territory. And I think that will be also equally disastrous, because if the United States takes Iranian territory, that would be an escalation. And that would be damage to Iran's vital infrastructure. And thus Iran will also have to retaliate against those Arab dictatorships and U.S. assets there and other assets, because those regimes are complicit in the war. So as we move forward, all I can see is escalation, unless the Trump regime declares victory and walks away, like with Yemen. But even then,
and that's exactly what I think is his only move. And I'll just remind you that what he's talking about is the way in which Iran strikes back at critical infrastructure associated with energy. I mean, it was just last Wednesday they attacked the Ras Laffan, the Qatari complex. That's a fifth of the world's LNG that goes through there. And the Qataris, the Kuwaitis, the Saudis were all hit. And this is just the beginning. I want to play you the other side, though, because Lindsey Graham, cut 15, then I'll get to Gary. Lindsey Graham feels, go for it. Things are going great. Don't call it off now. Here's Lindsey Graham on Fox News.
Is it going to involve U.S. troops on the ground? Let me just read you something from The Atlantic. Does an assessment on that. They say U.S. troops may well take Kharg Island. We believe in their ability to do so, but only to endure ballistic missile strikes, drone attacks, petrochemical smoke, all without a reliable means of obtaining logistical support. The result could be a grinding war of attrition. They talk about how far away they would be from resupply.
I'm sort of tired of all this armchair quarterback, and this has been an amazing military operation. God bless the fallen.
But it's a difference when we talk about troops on the ground.
I trust the Marines, not that guy. I trust DOD. We got 2 Marine expeditionary units sailing to this island. We did Iwo Jima. We can do this. The Marines, my money is always on the Marines. I don't know if you take the island or you blockade the island, but I know this. The day we control that island, this regime, this terrorist regime, has been weakened. It will die on a vine. And here's what I want to do. I want to get with Chris. I want to sprint to peace. As the war winds down, I want peace to ramp up. The reason we don't have Saudi Arabia and Israel making peace is October the 7th, 2023. Iran, through Hamas, attacked Israel, stopping normalization. I want to take up and complete what Biden started. As soon as we get Iran defanged so they can never do another October 7th, I want to start up peace talks between Saudi and Israel this year. I want a peace deal between Saudi and Israel, normalizing, ending the Arab-Israeli conflict. It's been going on for 2,000 years this year, and you can't do it with a lethal Iran. So we're weeks away from this Iranian regime not having the capability to stop peace.
Okay, very quickly, though, because we got to go. Who is going to be negotiating for Iran? What's the new leadership going to be?
I don't know. We don't need to really worry about negotiating with Iran. We need to keep them in a box. What are you going to negotiate Iran with? What I want to do is contain them, take their missile program and keep it blown up, make sure they can never sprint out to a nuke, make sure they have no money to support terrorism, control the island and let them die on a vine, and hopefully the people will rise up. What I'm looking for is defanging Iran so we can move to peace. The Iranian people one day will have ability to take their country back. But we have the best chance in 2,000 years when Iran is neutralized for Saudi and Israel to recognize each other in the Arab-Israeli conflict. That is my goal. That is President Trump's goal. 2026 could be the biggest year since 1945 if we neutralize Iran. Don't let them do it again.
Well, okay.
Boy, there's a lot going on there. It's interesting just because you mentioned this, and I'll get to Gary. The American intelligence assessment suggested that armed elements of the Iranian government could turn on one another or take action that might set off a civil war. This is before all of this happened. In really good reporting now, we're getting word of what the intelligence assessment actually said. American officials briefed on an intelligence assessment before the war said the CIA evaluated a variety of possible developments inside Iran once the conflict began. Intelligence agencies considered a full collapse of the Iranian government to be a relatively unlikely outcome. Other U.S. officials familiar with the intelligence said that even when the government is under pressure, as it was during mass protests in the country in January in which thousands were killed, it managed to quell uprisings relatively quickly. Again, and then those armed factions could turn on each other. That was another scenario broken out in another intelligence assessment. The most likely outcome, however, was that hardline elements of the existing government, this was, again, the official American intelligence assessment from the inside, before all of this started, the most likely outcome was that hardline elements of the existing government would maintain control over the levers of power. So, in a way, if you've read the briefing materials, as we know, the president sadly does not really in any real way. The intelligence assessment discouraged this kind of move if you were looking for the outcome that they're talking about, which is a replacement of the regime and these other kinds of goals that are mentioned in those reports. None of those goals are reached by this incursion into Iran. Anyway, that's from the New York Times, some pretty solid reporting based on multiple sources within the intelligence community. So, we continue.
The Mark Thompson Show.
I am always delighted to talk to this guy on Mondays. And these days, Mondays are busy because generally a lot happens over the weekend. He is the political analyst for iHeart Media, also on the CBS television stations. He's the wonderful Gary Dietrich, everyone. Hi, Gary.
Hey, good morning, Mark. And you're absolutely right about that. There's never a dull weekend anymore politically, is there?
I'm going to ask you some stuff that's related to the vote because some stuff has happened that is very much related to the coming midterms. And then I'm going to get to the war, okay? So we're going to back burner the war for a second. Tony, can you play me the Sheldon Whitehouse remarks? This is cut 17, and he's talking about the Save America Act, which Donald Trump has underscored as the cornerstone legislation that he wants to see passed, and until it is, he is not signing any other legislation. Go ahead.
I'm here to speak about the so-called Save America Act, which I think probably would be better described as the Steal the Next Election Act. You can imagine why they would want to engage in special weapons and tactics to try to win the 2026 election when you see the political disaster that they're enmeshed in, the mess that the Trump administration has made of the economy, the stench of corruption pervading the administration, a war that is running up gasoline prices and has no end in sight and no evident plan. Wherever you look, you see a party in complete disarray. And so this whole scheme gets cooked up, marketed falsely as some civic safe voting proposition, when what it really is a scheme to influence elections so that the creepy billionaires behind the Republican Party can continue to control the decisions that get made in this town. That's what this is about, plain and simple. This is no small thing, and if you want to know what the motive is, just ask the people who are running this. We just want to make sure the right people vote.
He's holding up
We'll
cards
never
now.
lose a race for 50 years if you pass this bill.
That's Trump's. These are Trump quotes. And
It'll guarantee the midterms, that is using the power of government to put the fix in, to fix the elections that choose who runs the government. That is about as un-American as it gets.
So, Gary, I want to ask you now about this Save America Act, which a lot of focus a lot of focus on the Safe America Act, I think, is on the voter ID and having to show some kind of identification, but there are also bureaucratic layers of this as well. So from a practical standpoint, it might be just hard to manage this prior to the midterms because it puts a lot of pressure, administrative pressure on those who are managing elections state by state. But go ahead. Give me your thoughts on this.
Well, certainly, there's been a line in the sand right now anyway for Trump vis-a-vis the Congress. It's really stuck in the Senate. We'll see where the details of it go. One thing we know, Mark, about polling on all of this is that if you just narrow it down just to that one provision of voter ID, that's actually quite popular, as you know. I mean, you get as high as 80-20 on some of those things. And California now, as you know, is now qualifying, or the signatures have been turned in, over 1 million of them, to do just that in California. And the polling even in California, a deep blue state like California, shows that just on that, if you just had voter ID, which required, somebody to walk into a polling place, be able to identify themselves with a government-issued government-issued a photo ID, that's quite popular. When you start getting into all these other things, that's when you get into the weeds. That's when it becomes more problematic. Whether the GOP is finally going to strip a lot of that out and just go with that one popular, element and get it through, I don't know. The problem right now in the Senate is, are they going to use the filibuster or not, right? Are they going to bust the filibuster? I mean, this is where the layers of politics in Washington can be mind-numbing to the person out there, because really this comes down to, is the GOP going to break the filibuster to get this through the Senate? It's already through the House. So that's where this stands politically, Mark. Whether this holds up all other legislation, that's going to be exceptionally problematic, particularly when it comes to funding TSA, which, right now, along with gas prices that seem to have maybe potentially, we've seen a big drop in oil today, by the way, which I know we're going to get to probably later. But along with gas prices, this TSA line deal, that's where the rubbers meet in the road for the average voter.
Yeah, it's worth noting, because you mentioned TSA. TSA is being, as you know, augmented or in some way helped, I'll put it in quotes, by ICE agents who are now in the nation's airports. We had an incident at SFO. I don't know, Kim, if you can rally it, cut one. But this is actually an incident that went down at SFO. And there have actually, in addition to ICE's general, I guess, management of the lines and all this sort of thing, there's actually an effort to detain travelers who they pull out of line and feel are not showing up with appropriate identification or are not in the country legally. In other words, a lot of what is happening, and we've seen happen in Minneapolis, is now happening on lines to get through TSA checkpoints. So this is an escalation of hostilities that we've seen on the streets of America, now visited upon America's airports, and America's airports are already insanely stressed. So I don't think Kim's going to be able to rally that. So just speak to this, if you would, and the situation with TSA now in the kind of free fall it's in. There are sick outs and people resigning from TSA, and now ICE agents added to the mix.
Yeah, well, the simple solution to this, Mark, obviously, is to fund TSA. As you know, that's hung up over ICE. I mean, that's the problem when you have, when you fund things in blocks by agency, right? And so both of those elements are under the same federal bureaucracy. And that's the problem here. Now, all of a sudden, Ted Cruz over the weekend said, look, enough of this. Let's just break out ICE and break out TSA funding at least. Let's just go ahead and pass TSA funding, right? See what happens here. You got Elon Musk over the weekend saying, hey, I'll just write the check for TSA agents who aren't getting paid here for these couple of weeks. So there's a lot of pressure building to get the TSA piece done. Politically speaking, Mark, and practically speaking, as you properly note, bringing in ICE at this point, however you want to do it, is probably not gonna, you want job one right now is untangle the big snarl, the big ball of yarn at TSA check the airports, and having ICE involved, even if you want to check people at airports, right? I mean, maybe you have a new policy and now you want to start checking people that are going through TSA. Now's not the time to do that, right? You gotta unsnarl these massive log jams at our airports. So Yeah, I thought the whole ICE idea seemed a little crazy to begin with. If you want extra help managing those lines, pick another federal agency to do it. Probably not ICE at this particular juncture.
Yeah, well, I mean, just to echo that, I mean, in my judgment, ICE is not even qualified. And we've already reviewed the fact that they are poorly trained, if trained at all. They're basically now just given badges and guns and told to go out there in their uniforms and thuggishly hassle people, in my judgment. But beyond that, they're certainly not trained to the point that they can in any way assist the TSA list of tasks each day. So their presence takes a crowded airport where there are already lines of 3.5 hours. It adds a bunch of other guys there who really don't know what the hell they're doing. So what you end up is with scenes like this from SFO where they're pulling people out of lines and trying to detain them. It is a mess. I'll just note also that they did break out the separate funding on the floor of the Senate, as you know, Gary, the Democrats did, and the funding for TSA, that is to fund TSA only, 48 GOP senators voted against it. So there is the politics. That's why I like talking to you. It seems like we're bleeding out, but even as we're bleeding out, both sides are playing, it would seem, high stakes politics.
Well, and Mark, we talk about this every week, but we have to, okay? You cannot divorce any of these actions, individually or in aggregate, in the Congress, in the absence of something happening 7.5 months from now that could change the entire direction of politics in our country, and that's these midterm elections. So as you know, Mark, in the shadow of that, every single vote, every single amendment, every single suggestion, every single press conference has to be viewed in light of that, because every one of the people speaking and everyone, I don't care if it's White House or, who you played, or whether it's Cruz or whoever it is, or Lindsey Graham, everybody's talking in light of that. And so that's what makes, as you know, Mark, getting any of these individual problems solved so difficult.
I want to get to the war in a moment, but I don't want to quite leave the elections yet. I saw this and I really wanted to get your opinion on it. Trump reshapes a key U.S. House race by offering a candidate and her husband roles if they drop out. President Donald Trump is reshaping a Colorado Republican primary by offering one of the candidates a role in his administration and returning his endorsement to the incumbent, whom he called a rhino just last month. Trump said that he met with Hope Schleppelman, who is running for Colorado's 3rd district, and her husband, Stephen, quote, to discuss various opportunities to serve our country in a different capacity than her current run for the United States Congress. Hope and Stephen are wonderful and patriotic veterans of our U.S. Navy and loyal supporters of our historic Make America Great Again movement, Trump said. Therefore, I am proud to announce that they will be leaving the campaign trail in order to join my administration in a capacity to be determined. Trump has used his endorsement as a tool to exert power or threaten members of Congress who go against him. But despite Trump making good on that threat, House Speaker Mike Johnson appeared to demonstrate how the president can also be convinced to change his mind. Two sources familiar with the matter said that Johnson made a strong case to the White House to support Hurd, who represents a competitive district that Trump won by about 10 points in 2024. So look, I didn't want to get too much into the weeds, but I just wanted to speak to the power of the executive to somehow exert leverage on a Colorado congressional race. Can you speak to this?
Yeah, absolutely. And here's the thing. Let's go back to what I was just talking about. That is the vast critical importance of the midterms. It's just impossible to overstate, because it could completely emasculate much of the Trump presidency for the second half of it and lead up to a exceptionally contentious presidential race in both parties. So here's the thing. It's raw numbers. So Mike Johnson comes to the president and says, look, I think our best shot to win this seat is XYZ candidate. Okay, whatever you got to do, help clear the field for XYZ candidate. And by the way, Mark, you know, this is not new. This has gone on for decades and decades by administrations on both sides. This notion of helping to clear out races so your party can maintain control or advance in the Senate and the House, this is nothing new. I mean, this is, these kind of appointments, ambassadorships, all kinds of stuff are doled out all the time for all kinds of reasons, politically speaking. So this shouldn't surprise anybody on the larger macro scale. But what it does show, I think, to me is, and to most observers is, we're now down to counting one seat at a time. That, who cares? People say, well, who cares about a Colorado? Well, you care because it might be the tipping point seat.
Sure. All right, now to the war. The war is either going swimmingly, if you listen to Lindsey Graham and Scott Bessent, or the Iranians are exerting pressure and leverage on the Strait. They've also demonstrated the ability through their missiles to hit vital energy operations in the allied Middle Eastern countries. I'm talking about Qatar, UAE, the Saudis, etc., and in Israel. I don't want to leave that out. Israel's taken some intense fire. There's a mass casualty event in Israel over the weekend. But depending on exactly where we are, you can evaluate the future in a couple of different ways. Here's Scott Bessent. Again, he's in the things are going great category, and they trot him out. By the way, I don't understand why you trot out the Secretary of the Treasury to talk about the war, but I think it's because of his manner. I think Trump is very concerned with how things play on television, in the media, and Bessent is one of these sort of has a calming manner almost. Again, not though in his area, the war in Iran, but nonetheless, he's talking about how well things are going.
Losing the war. That is wrong. We have demolished the Iranian capabilities. Their Air Force is completely destroyed, Navy destroyed, and every day we are taking out their missiles, their missile systems, and the factories that build those missiles. And now the General Kane, Secretary Hegseth are leading a campaign to destroy all the fortifications along the Straits of Hormuz.
Just to put a fine point on this, though, is the president in the process of winding down this war or escalating the conflict?
Again, they're not mutually exclusive. Sometimes you have to escalate to de-escalate, Chris.
Okay. NBC News is reporting that President Trump is considering sending troops into Iran. Will the administration use troops to secure the Strait of Hormuz or for any other reason, Mr. Secretary?
Again, as President Trump said during the press break yesterday when he was going out to Marine One, he's not going to give away what we're going to do. He's, as President Trump always does, he's leaving all options on the table. We had a very successful bombing campaign against the military installations at Kharg Island, the nexus for all the Iranian oil supply. What could happen with Kharg Island, we'll see. And again, just to be clear, the command and control system of the Iranian regime is in chaos. This is Hitler's bunker. Hitler is dead. Himmler is dead. Goring is dead. Most of what you're seeing are lone wolf activities. The mid-range ICBM that was shot off, these two missiles yesterday, that's out of desperation, Kristen.
So, Gary, that's a snapshot from the standpoint of the administration, who have an ongoing interest in talking about how well things are going. Where do you see things right now for this administration in Iran?
Yeah. By the way, just a parenthetical on Bessent. I think part of it is the guy is quite good on camera, as you know, and concise and as you say, calmer. But I think it's deeper than that too, Mark. I think Bessent's presence signals a very clear, regular head nod from the administration to Wall Street, to economies around the world of, okay, look, we know it's not just military. We know that you're worried about oil price, right? I mean, it's a continued acknowledgement. We get it when it comes to the economic impacts, and we're not ignorant of that. So that's the Bessent presence, in my view. As far as where things are now, I put this in three quick packages, Mark. In terms of degrading Iranian assets, everybody around the world agrees, yes, that's happening. There's been some shock as to why you still have mid-range ICBMs available in the last week, right? Why you still have as many drones and missiles. The reason is because Iran's a really big country geographically, and they did a pretty darn good job over the years of hiding and distributing their assets. So that's part of the challenge just militarily. But whether you pick the 80% figure or whatever figure it is, there's no question that their assets and their capabilities, particularly when it comes to things like visible assets, like their Navy, the Air Force, and all, have been significantly degraded. That's one. Number two, the biggest single issue right now is the Strait of Hormuz. Everybody knows that. That is the focal point in the last week, as you know, Mark. You had allies, basically what you call them allies. I just call them beneficiaries of the strait, right? I mean, it doesn't matter whether it's Japan and Australia or almost the entire NATO partnership, all coming out, some 20 some countries over the weekend saying, yeah, we agree, we want, and we're going to help get that back open. It's because some of these countries, like for example, Japan, 70% dependent on what comes through the strait. Okay. So that's going to be the focal point, Mark, right now. Get the strait open, keep it open. And as I mentioned to you last week, Mark, I remember, how do you sustain it and how do you keep it open longer term? It's not good enough just to get the freighters going through, the oil tankers going through this week and next month. How do you keep Iran from just choking it off again 2 years from now? Okay, that's the thing. And then the last piece I would simply add is the larger narrative and the larger evaluation. Are we achieving, quote unquote, the established goals? What are those? Things like degradation of the regime. It could be a change in the regime, although that was really added on later. A cessation or at least a significant degradation of Iran's support of terrorist activities, their nuclear program. So those goals, I think, are still up for grabs in terms of how those are going to end up in the long run. In the short run, it's deal with the Strait of Hormuz and try to figure out a way to get it open now and keep it open. I'm thinking, and the way it's looking now, there's more and more talk about some sort of a coalition control, that would as a sort of mini League of Nations, work to keep the strait in sort of quote unquote neutral hands.
Yeah, we talked about this a week ago, the fact that the world community might come together in some way. You mentioned China and Pakistan and India. Iran has allowed some friendly countries, this in reporting from the New York Times, including China, India, Pakistan, Malaysia, and Iraq, to secure safe passage of their ships through the Strait of Hormuz. Now, Iranian lawmakers are discussing new rules to get through the strait, including a potential transit fee. Iranian and shipping news media reporting around a fifth of the world's oil and gas supplies moving through the strait. And with Iran maintaining a de facto blockade, it may make a deal to have transit fees paid and agreements made with some of these countries, China, India, Pakistan, Malaysia, Iraq, etc., such that maybe there would be ships passing through. There are ships passing through now, as noted. At least 9 ships have left the strait. But as you've also noted, things are getting more and more intense around that region, and America is looking for ways to secure that passage. And, it's not just the strait, right, Gary? I mean, the strait is part of it, but it's called the Persian Gulf for a reason.
Right. And here's the thing. If there's any good news in what you just shared, Mark, and what's been coming out in the last week, as people have noted, mines don't have politics. So if you were mining the strait, you wouldn't have 9 ships that have gotten through. So that's the good news. I mean, it's sort of backhanded good news, but okay, they haven't choked off the strait. Ships can get through if currently the Iranians want them to. This interesting thing is transit fee. There was even a number thrown out over the weekend, Mark, $2 million per ship. Okay, that's the price tag. Well, you can imagine how well that's going to go over with the global community. I think they're going to say thanks, but no thanks. For the old people that know Disneyland on the way back, the A ticket is too pricey. We're not paying that. Okay, that's not going to happen. So I think that was it's an interesting thought, that Iran would be able to sort of have a turnstile and charge people as they go through. I just think that's a non-starter. But some people are saying, well, it's because they're going to need some serious cash after all this is over. I don't know. The choke point for Iran right now, along with the strait, which is what the West and everybody else globally wants open, the choke point for Iran is Kyrgyz Island. And so anytime there's talk about where would you really put a stranglehold on the economy and on the Iranian regime going forward, it's that oil export terminal, and terminals plural, on that island. And that's where apparently the Marines may be headed, et cetera, et cetera. But it's sort of like, that's sort of seen as the last straw. If we have to, we'll cut it off. And the Iranians will get no revenue out of that. We'll have no access to it. But it could be there's a lot of debate about how costly that could be in both time and treasure, and sadly, maybe blood.
And the other thing I would just say about Karg Island is there's sort of this sense that, that operation itself is doable. As you suggested, I think you kind of, it was implicit and you just made it explicit, which is that there could be bloodshed. There'll be real casualties if you try this. There's this sense, I think, it's delusional, and I'm seeing it more and more in the American rhetoric, which is kind of that we send in a SEAL team, a special team, maybe Tom Cruise will lead it up, and we'll go in there and we'll somehow take Karg Island, and we'll choke their choke point. But the reality is, as you've suggested, that's an extremely difficult operation. It may not be successful without that loss of life, and it leaves out the ways in which they can hit critical infrastructure. They've already demonstrated. I was talking about it earlier in the show. They did it last week. That's what kind of brought us to this crisis point. Oh my God, they're hitting the Qataris. They're hitting the Saudis. They're hitting Israel. They're looking at the desalination plants in all of these places as well. As you know, these desal plants are critical to life in the Middle East. So, it's not like just taking Karg Island is like capture the flag. There is going to be a response from the Iranians, and it could be devastating.
Yeah, that's why if you were today to sit down and look at all the plan A, B, C, D, F, G, went down to Z, there probably is a briefing book that's a couple feet thick of all the different scenarios and options. And by the way, the other sort of plan B on Karg Island is, well, maybe we don't send boots in, maybe we don't do any more bombing of it. We simply blockade it, right? And we made it impossible for ships to be, for oil to be offloaded on the tankers from that. So there's so many different scenarios, Marcus. This is literally changing almost hour to hour, certainly day by day. So by the time you and I talk again next week, there could be 10 other different scenarios here. But I think that the key point right now is, what is it going to take? And by the way, we haven't even really talked about this so-called negotiations or talks. There's really clear debate today between Iranian sources and American sources about whether there's conversations going on between the two nations. Reportedly, there is, at least back channel ones. Trump made clear today, no, I haven't talked to Khomeini's son. We haven't even seen him, let alone talked to him. But Witkoff and others, yes, there is back channel. I wouldn't be surprised about that at all. That commonly occurs to cut a deal that, okay, what would it take to XYZ? We'll see where that goes this week.
Yeah. And as you may have heard, I suggested some time ago, days ago, that Trump's off-ramp is that it's not just that he declares victory and leaves. He says that we have had negotiations with the Iranians. They've agreed to a number of our demands from the standpoint of their nuclear enrichment program and also in terms of their missile development. And congratulations to the Iranians on meeting our demands, and we're leaving. That is, and then Trump just says it over and over. And when the Iranians say, hey, we never said that, we didn't even negotiate with this guy, you simply, and only Trump could do this, they don't want to admit it. Of course, I wouldn't want to admit it either, but they agreed, and I'm grateful to them for doing so. I mean, again, I think he's doing a version of that now, but we will see, as you say. Love our talks.
By the way, Mark, the problem is we don't know, right? I mean, and I know from where you sit. Well, do I trust Trump more than I trust the Iranians? I mean, the bottom line is those discussions could well be happening, and the Iranians have a lot of reasons not to acknowledge them, right?
Sure.
The problem here, it's the two bullies that neither one of them wants to cry uncle, right? In the schoolyard deal, and I'm not trying to make light of this, but the Iranians have no interest at all in looking like they lost even a scintilla out of this conflict. They want to come out the victors too, so they're not going to admit if they're trying to negotiate something as well.
I think on the way in, they're both even. I don't trust either one, and they both have interest, as you say, in not admitting to to tapping out. Thanks, Gary. Love our conversation. Talk to you Monday. Gary Dietrich, everybody. And Gary is brought to us by our friends at Remax Gold. Bill Campbell there. If you're relocating into or from Northern California, we have a lot of Northern California, listeners and viewers. And you need a highly respected real estate professional. Bill Campbell's your guy. Remax Gold. You can call or text him. 530-448-7474. 448-7474. Bill Campbell, Remax Gold. Yeah.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Thank you for being here, everyone. I hold in my hand, right before I get to Sarah Kendzior, Coachella Valley Coffee, which I'm crazy about. They are our longest partner and sponsor. And, you know, in independent media, you need sponsors and partners. And I will say, we should send Sarah Kendzior some Coachella Valley Coffee. I sent her a coffee mug months ago. I don't know if she ever received it. But the point is, into that mug, she can pour that Coachella Valley Coffee, which is the best coffee on earth. You can go to their website, find the tasting profiles on so many of the beans and all of the teas and spices. It's all top drawer. This is a boutique roastery. This is not some discount roastery. It's all organic and ethically sourced from women-owned farms. And it is the best coffee on earth. I was drinking it before they ever came on board. So use the discount code MARKT at checkout. You'll get 10% off. CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. Again, discount code is MARKT at checkout for 10% off.
Put that coffee down.
Yeah, to get 10% off. Right on. CoachellaValleyCoffee.com.
The Mark Thompson Show.
She is a brilliant journalist, best-selling author, and her following of the Mueller investigation, the Epstein revelations, now looks revelatory in retrospect. She's predicted so much of what has happened in America. I have links to all of her books under this video, and she joins us now, Sarah Kendzior. Hello, Sarah. Sarah, something we haven't mentioned yet, I wanted to get your thoughts on because you've written extensively about him, and that is Robert Murller. Robert Murller passed away over the weekend. Robert Murller passed away over the weekend, and in the weird, I have to say, I mean, it's almost, to call it unpresidential is sort of, I don't know, gratuitous in a way. It's just crazy weird. Trump was sort of dancing on his grave saying, you know, Robert Murller died good. I don't know if we have that post, but the point is that Trump, no fan of Mueller, and the investigation was all about Russian involvement in the election, but that whole process took forever. And by the time it came out, Bill Barr himself enormously compromised. You've written about that extensively as well. Dry cleaned it for the American public, got out in front days ahead of time to say, yeah, nothing here, you know. And it was odd then to kind of reflect on what Mueller did. But I was looking forward to having you on. Here it is. Trump saying that he was condemning people celebrating Charlie Kirk's death and said, we wouldn't celebrate if something happened on their side, and we don't. These are sick people. These are deranged people. And then, of course, when it came to Robert Mueller's death, he said, Robert Murller just died. Good. I'm glad he's dead. He can no longer hurt innocent people, President Donald Trump. Speak to me about Trump in relation to Mueller, but also Mueller and who he is and what he did. I got to unmute Sarah, please. Oh, there you go. I still don't hear her. Why is that, Kim? Hold on a second. If we can't hear you, no. Let me say, looking at you is lovely, but I'd love to hear also. So why don't you leave and come back, maybe, yeah, leave and come back, and then I think sometimes it gets glitchy that way. No problem. By the way, Sandy says, I don't know anyone who mourned Kirk's death. Nobody celebrated it. Says, Mueller was no hero. Mueller was a Nazi neocon fascist, says Antifa Bob. All right. And here we go. Sarah has interesting perspective, says Northern Tier, and hopefully we'll be able to hear her. Try it again, Sarah. No, damn it. What's going on, Kim? Is it me? Let me see. Is it me, Kim? What is going on? I've lost Tony, so I don't know what...
I don't know, but Sarah's trying to fix it on her end. It looks like
I blame you.
Okay, well, maybe it's my...
Oh, Sarah.
Yeah, she's doing something. I'll be right back, she says. Okay, cool.
Okay, all right.
So while she's doing that, I'm just reading some text related to, or these are comments. You can comment in the show. We're live, as you know, and feel free to comment during the show and after the show. I read all the comments. Trump tried to bully Iran and got karma instead. Iran slapped the orange out of Trump, and Bibi is hiding in a bunker like a chicken. Chaplain Fred said. Thank you, Chaplain Fred. I mean, I do think that Trump is getting an unexpected slap in the face in this case. Got to go to work, as Frazier says. I'm listening, says Glenn B.
Big shout out.
Oh, wow. Frazier reference. Very strong. Rename it the Trump Strait and get the hell out of there, says Mike in Willow Glen. Some version of that is probably what's going to happen. No, we don't have her muted, Mondo. I don't know why we can't hear. Here, let's add Sarah now. Try it again. Why? What is going on? I can't hear her. No, I don't. Oh, wait, you're muted, though. I'm seeing you're muted. Can you unmute? I'm seeing you're muted. Yeah, now I still don't hear her. This is like the most disappointing. What a horrible way to start the week. I can't hear Sarah Kendzior.
How about now?
Now you got it. I love it.
Right.
I love it. I love it. I love it. All right.
I'm unattached from the microphone, so it might be crappy quality.
No, you sound good. No, you sound good. I don't know.
Okay.
Thank you for.
There must be something with that. I don't know. All right. So,
all right. Let me just set it up again so they can just hard cut here for the video.
Okay.
Robert Murller died over the weekend. Sarah Kendzior, you've written extensively about Mueller, the Mueller report, the Bill Barr dry cleaning job that was done on the Mueller report, and you've written extensively about who Barr was and who his dad was and all that. But give me some thoughts on Robert Murller, please.
Well, Robert Murller is an interesting figure. I mean, obviously, what Trump wrote was inappropriate, but Mueller, like everyone else in the FBI, in the end, did Trump a tremendous favor. He did what most DOJ officials have done, which is run out the clock on Trump's crimes and ultimately let him get away with it because the statute of limitations runs out. And of course, this is not limited to Mueller. It's limited to the people who failed to do anything with Mueller's probe, with his long investigative report. That report was notable in that it kind of omitted the decades of Trump's criminal ties, his criminal past, but it nonetheless gave a clear case of obstruction of justice charges that Congress could have run with to impeach Trump, to criminally convict Trump. A lot of people could have done things with the work of Mueller and his team, and they did not. And so that's on them. But one thing that's interesting about Mueller that I think folks should look into is a 2011 speech, January 2011, called The Evolving Organized Crime Threat. And so Mueller gave this speech when he was the head of the FBI, and it describes the world that we are living in right now, in which we were living in then, but few were daring to acknowledge it. It's a world in which organized crime infiltrated corporations, governments, merged with white collar crime in a way that Western democracy was threatened. And Mueller identified this as the greatest threat, to Western democracy, more so than terrorism, although, connected to terrorism. The interesting thing here is that he was fully aware of this. It's a very good speech, and then proceeded to do nothing about it when he had the opportunity as the special counsel during Trump's first term. And it also mirrors a lot of things in Mueller's past, where there were a lot of, criminal activities that when he was heading the FBI or just working for the FBI, happened right under his nose, and he either reacted too slowly or did nothing. That includes, Jeffrey Epstein. He was head of the FBI then. It includes earlier work in partnership to an extent with Bill Barr, back when Bill Barr was the AG under George H.W. Bush, involving BCCI, nicknamed the Bank of Crooks and Criminals, because so many people involved in different corrupt governments around the world, including the American government, were using that as a money laundering service. So, I've talked on your show before about how a lot of these crimes go back to Iran-Contra, a lot of things kind of happening simultaneously, you know, Epstein, Trump, the Russian mafia, Israeli mafia, transnational organized crime, essentially. Mueller was very well versed in this topic, but in terms of what he actually did, what his ultimate legacy would be, he is the guy who failed to stop it. He is somebody who endangered us further through inaction. And of course, Garland picked up that mantle, as did Cy Vance, as did so many others. So yeah, it's a very a mixed legacy at best, but I think mostly a negative one. So.
It's interesting, too, that it coexists with sort of this impression of Mueller. Here's Emmett, who writes, I think Mueller was decent considering he ran the FBI and had a lot of power. I give him credit. He didn't weaponize the FBI. But what you're saying, Sarah, is, in a way, by overlooking things and not pursuing things, you are weaponizing, in a sense.
Yeah, he did a lot to help a lot of white collar organized criminals, you know, everyone from Trump to Jeffrey Epstein. You know, his tactics, they would refer to him as an institutionalist. And by that, they would mean, you know, he's respectable, he's cautious. That's a euphemistic word. What he was doing was protecting the reputation of the DOJ and of the FBI. Meanwhile, the DOJ and the FBI, you know, were abetting a large number of criminal actors, many of them, you know, billionaires, extremely wealthy people straddling that nebulous line between organized crime and technically legal corruption. And that's what's so interesting about this speech, the evolving organized crimes threat, is that he says, you know, this line is getting murkier and murkier. It's getting harder for us, you know, at the FBI to actually prosecute these criminals because they know these loopholes. They have this, you know, kind of, you know, blurry form of legality, and they're crossing borders. You know, these are people with multiple passports. These are people with offshore accounts. He's exactly describing the network that was behind Donald Trump, behind Jeffrey Epstein. It's an overlapping network. He emphasizes, you know, that pursuing somebody like this, it's not like The Sopranos. That's the analogy he says. You know, this is not The Sopranos. This is not a bunch of guys sitting around a diner hashing things out. This is incredibly sophisticated and incredibly respectable looking. And so, you know, that's a very interesting thing about his life and work, is that he was among the few to really call that out. He specifically named Semyon Mogilevich, you know, who was a transnational mobster, came out of the USSR, went to Israel, went to Hungary, went to Western Europe, and then came to the United States, where he was put at the top of the FBI's 10 most wanted list. And he was put there by Mueller. He remained there for a long time until Trump was the presidential candidate in 2016, in which Comey, actually it was in December 2015, I believe this happened. James Comey, who came as head of the FBI after Mueller left, took Mogilevich off that list, replaced him with a bank robber, and never gave any explanation why. And the timing of this is extremely interesting, given that Mogilevich is tied to people directly in Trump's fold. It would have been very inconvenient for him to have been an object of inquiry and focus. Usually people don't write or mention him at all because he's really scary. You know, he's the head of this giant criminal organization. But he was living in the U.S. for a while. And the FBI prior to 9/11 was investigating him and his network quite thoroughly. There's a book called Red Mafia by Robert I. Friedman that lays this out. This came out in 2000. When 9/11 happened, the FBI just moved to Islamic terrorism, and they really dropped this investigation of white collar and organized crime merging in incredibly dangerous ways. And it's a great shame because you can't disconnect that from terrorism. It's linked to those same bodies. Like, who do you think is funding them? So they did a grave disservice. You know, I think he was obviously intelligent, you know, he knew what was up, but just chose to not do anything about it. And why that is something I wish he would have clarified before his passing.
And even at the end of that run that you've just described, I mean, we had up there the GRU hacking into DNC accounts, et cetera. There's this, Hollywood Cowgirl says, Mueller did what he was assigned to do, look into Russian interference in the election. That's it. So that's at the end of the kind of run that you were just describing. And I can see where he was slavish to that particular specific thing, the Russian involvement in the election, while ignoring the money. Like if you follow the money through your writings, for example, you get the international syndicate associated with it. But the thing that he did, I think, in some way, was just to be slavishly loyal to the directive, which was look into Russian interference in the election. Boom, that's it. So Russian money, pre-election, he didn't really focus on that.
Yeah, and that was frustrating to watch because it's actually really difficult to look into Russian interference in the 2016 election and not look into transnational organized crime. In fact, his team, his probe, was doing that. They were looking at a lot of American groups, American organizations, and how there was money coming in, not just from Russia, but connected to Israel, to Saudi Arabia, to UAE. A lot of that didn't make it into the report, but they were looking at people like, say, Michael Cohen, for example, one of the few people to actually testify. He is a product of that world of the, quote, Russian mafia, which is really a transnational mafia. If you look at Trump and his history, going back to the Russian mafia using Trump Tower as a dorm, all the investments that Trump made with this group, with people like Felix Sater, with Bayrock, it's hard to divorce that entire criminal history from it, but that's what they chose to do in the report. And that's why, I lay more of the blame on Congress, especially for the first impeachment, which I think should have been over the Mueller report. He writes this gigantic report. He lays out all these charges of obstruction of justice. They're very clear cut. I mean, Trump helped greatly in this endeavor by confessing to them on television. So, it wasn't the hardest crime to solve. I'm not sure why it took Mueller several years to come to this conclusion. Nonetheless, though, he dotted his I's and crossed his T's and everything but the word indict. And, Congress had quite a lot to work with. And instead, what they did was come up with a brand new crime, a crime committed in the year 2019, a crime involving targeting Joe Biden and his family in Ukraine, therefore setting up this dynamic of Biden in Ukraine versus Trump in Russia, which then played into the election the next year, even though Biden was not the candidate. In retrospect, and actually at the time, it's incredibly strange. Why not use this giant report put together over a period of 2 years by a team of professionals that, interviewed people from all over the place, dug very deeply. Instead, they just chose to completely ignore it. And I think it's for the same reasons. They did not want to follow that money trail. They did not want to see what countries it led to. They did not want to see that it led straight back home, to the United States and to the FBI's own failures. It involves an examination of American institutional complicity at worst and incompetence at best. And that was something that, and this also applies to Congress and their incompetence and complicity. They did not want to look in the mirror, in other words, because it's just, Donald Trump's grinning face, staring back at them with a, gang of goons behind him.
It's funny because it was almost a choreographed overshooting of this huge report that you got to get to the impeachment, as you suggest, which was far more limited and involved something different. And the Mueller report was replete with examples of the obstruction of justice. Yeah. Peter says, the thing with Mueller is he treated the Mueller report like a legal case, but the system, in capital letters, required it to function as a political accountability moment. And it is true that impeachment is a political act too. I mean, somehow you have to bring these things together, the legal and the breaking of the law and the politics of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think I said at the time, because people kept saying, oh, he has to go buy the book. And I'm like, you can't go buy the book when the book is burning. The fact that Trump was even able to run in 2016, that he wasn't considered a national security threat by the FBI, by the CIA, by all of these, agencies that had hard proof of Trump's background of criminality, in part because Trump confessed it, in part because it had been laid out, over decades by journalists. This is somebody who was under investigation by the DOJ itself, but all the way back to 1973. He was under investigation by the Treasury for the Taj Mahal casino. These are all things that would be disqualifying normally for a candidate. And at the least, they would be highlighted, by members of the government, by, Obama's administration or any of these agencies, or just by the media itself, which I also think failed us at this time. And so, Mueller could have certainly led a rigorous and, powerful investigation. And if he didn't want to be the outward facing voice of it, there were plenty of other people who would step in. Instead, what the DOJ had, and this is very disturbing, was a propaganda arm, an apparatus that said, wait, they're doing things behind the scenes. Like they have a secret plan, trust the plan. It was a reverse QAnon, it was QAnon for liberals, and anybody who went up against this propaganda apparatus got dragged through the mud. It happened to me, it happened to other people who were saying, this is an existential crisis for U.S. democracy. Like checks and balances will not hold, institutions will not protect us. The full story, the context of everything that Trump did that led up to, Russia and oligarchs and other, bad parties contributing to the 2016 election outcome. It all needs to be there. You need history. You need context. History and context are the enemies of autocracy. And so I get a bit suspicious when anyone, puts out some sort of BS, this is the legal protocol way. It's like what's on the line is our lives. Like what's on the line is our whole country. So, you can kind of look at what Trump has done. I'm not saying emulate him, but extreme situations cause for more creative and flexible measures.
Yeah, I mean, break the glass and pull the lever. I mean, it's important. This is from Depressed Canadian. Does Sarah think there are any high chances, or I guess of any criminal/legal accountability for members of the Trump administration? Does Sarah think there are any chances of any criminal or legal accountability for members of the Trump administration?
Yeah, I mean, maybe like in hell, and I believe in that enough for all of them. If they don't, no, I mean, I have to be like, which Trump administration? Which, honest to God, if I had said that 10 years ago, it's like the nightmare question from hell is which Trump administration, like mafia Grover Cleveland over here. So no, I don't think the Trump administration is going to punish itself. I think the only time that might happen is if Trump or someone else in the fold senses a betrayal, believes that somebody has, complied with the subpoena, therefore stabbing them in the back. I don't see the Democrats or anyone else really as being bold enough to actually tackle the corruption and criminality of both administrations. I mean, they had their chance multiple times. The guy led a seditious attempted coup. It was televised. They announced it on social media in advance. Like there were plenty of opportunities to rein him in. He is, in fact, a convicted felon on a more minor charge. The real problem is the Supreme Court. They needed to do all of this before the Supreme Court basically proclaimed that Trump was immune from prosecution. However, even if Trump is, that doesn't mean that, Kushner and other very dangerous people in his fold are, they also were not elected. And in Kushner's case, they're not even actually in the government. They're just running around the world doing dirty deals with no oversight whatsoever. So there should at least be an effort, I think, at oversight. Like if you can't actually press criminal charges and contain them, you need to alert the American public about what we're facing. And in order to do that, you need to look at the entire history, not just, the history from 2016 onward or the history from Trump's second term onward, but going all the way back, well into the 70s and Trump's rise and Roy Cohn and the mafia and the FBI's collaboration with the mafia and a lot of really difficult and complicated and painful subjects, but it's the only way forward. And it's sort of starting to happen with Epstein, but it's such a mess of disinformation and, propagandized narratives there that it makes it difficult. That's why I really, really wish this had been handled earlier. Honestly, a great time to handle this would have been when Robert Murller made that speech in January of 2011. I think we'd be in a different country if people had heeded his warnings, including if Robert Murller had heeded Robert Mueller's warnings. That would have been a good move. But.
Yeah, he kind of just delivered it to Congress and expected there to be some follow-up, or didn't, I don't know. But anyway, he didn't do any follow-up. He expected the Justice Department or the government instruments that would be tasked with handling the report to do something, and then, as you say, they didn't. And just on what you mentioned, when it comes to writings about that which you've spoken of, I mean, Epstein and the rise of Trump and all of that, I mean, Sarah's written extensively about this, and you can see it just proceeding and how we're living what is in your writings, and also David K. Johnson. I would kind of recommend those avenues if you really want to do a deep dive. Jamie says, Bannon said this about Mueller going after Trump, quote, they sent a Boy Scout, should have sent a hitman. And then Jamie says, and I hate Bannon. Yeah. With a limited role. So in our last couple of minutes, I do want to touch on Iran and the situation that Trump finds himself in. I'll mention this to you. My thought about the only way Trump was going to get out of this, I felt, was I get the whole declare victory and leave thing, but I think with Trump, he can get away with even one additional move, which is the Iranians have made a deal with me and my people, Witkoff, my golfing buddy, Kushner, my son-in-law. These are the guys handling this thing. It's insanity. But all right, he says the Iranians have made a deal. They're not going to pursue any kind of nuclear enrichment any further. They're not going to pursue their missile program. And for that reason, they're going to reopen the strait, however you want to characterize it, Trump, whatever crap he wants to float. And for that reason, we're pulling our American military out of this region, although we will be on standby in case they violate this. Then the Iranians say, we never even returned your calls. What are you talking about? We didn't have any of these conversations. And Trump says, well, I probably shouldn't even be telling you this. I don't blame them for saying that, but we made this deal, and that's the reason I can pull out, and I have restored peace to the region, whatever. And if he says it over and over again, at least he feels some of the crew that follows him will be happy. Again, I don't know how that plays out ultimately, but it strikes me as at least the potential exit ramp. He's done a version of that by threatening the Iranians if they don't reopen the strait, and then all of a sudden going, you know what, I'm going to give you 5 days more because we're pursuing backroom negotiations. And they're saying there are no negotiations going on. So it's a version of that now. Give me your sense of this whole Iranian thing and how Trump can possibly get out of it.
Yeah, I mean, I've said before, I don't think Trump wanted this war. And I'm not saying like Trump's some sort of peacenik. Trump's completely fine with mass violence. But this war was brought to us by the collaboration between the Israeli government and Iran hawks in the U.S., especially, elderly ones who can remember, 1979 and have been hungering for this moment, for almost 5 decades. That's who wanted this war. Trump doesn't like a quagmire. Previously on your show, I expressed fear that his dislike of this is so strong, his desire to get it over with so strong. I feared he would drop a nuclear weapon simply to end it. And also because I think he would enjoy doing that. But, if he's going to go out and say he made some sort of deal, great. You know what I mean? Like, fine, like, well done. Because the off ramp is the important thing. This is an incredibly frightening, destructive, horrific situation, not just for Iran and for the United States, but for the entire world. Any way that we can extract ourselves from it, I think is the right move. If that means like feigning applause for the madman dictator, then whatever. If lives are spared, then good. Unfortunately, I think there are a lot more powerful parties. You named a couple of them. I think, Kushner and Witkoff, and especially Netanyahu. They have wanted this for an incredibly long time. Netanyahu has openly admitted that America is making his 40-year dream come true. He also started, blabbing again about the Messiah coming and, referring to Amalek. Like there's a biblical component to this. It's also, people who are Christian in the government, Pete Hegseth, others, they see this as a fulfillment of biblical prophecy. Like there's a really disturbing number of U.S. officials who see this as a fulfillment of biblical prophecy and even see their own placement in the government as that. Like Chuck Schumer said that back in 2007, that God put him in the U.S. Senate to serve Israel, which is a very strange thing to say. I wrote an article called The No World Order about this. That's on my newsletter. It has lots of links to the direct sources because I know they all sound crazy, but this unfortunately is what they believe. Mike Johnson, he's another. And so I don't think it's really Trump's move. And I just, God, I never thought I'd say this. I hope Trump can override the people in his midst and take a little more power, and show him who's boss, because I don't think that this is his idea. And I do fear, though, about other ways he may pursue ending it. And if he says a deal, if they made a great, awesome deal, like his wonderful deals in the past, cool. Just end it. That's all anybody wants.
Float whatever bluff you want, float whatever crap you want, and get it out there in the media sphere. Yeah, and I think, this is a guy who got drunk on Venezuela and how he was in and out of that with his mic drop moment, and then he bombed Iran back in June, sort of with a choreographed response from the Iranians, so kind of no real repercussions from that. Moved the embassy to Jerusalem, and really didn't get a bunch of blowback on that. I mean, there was just rhetorical blowback.
Sheldon Adelson. I mean, that's the thing, is that there are a lot of donors who've wanted this war. Like, most of Trump's donors really wanted this war. A lot of donors to the Democratic Party also wanted this war, and that creates a giant problem. Like, Adelson described himself as a one-issue donor, and his issue was Israel. The same thing is true of Haim Saban for the Democrats. One-issue donor, issue is Israel. If Israel decides they want a war with Iran, then all that donor background becomes very relevant for both parties. And really the key move here, I think, would be stop accepting money from donors who are seeking, annihilation on a global scale. Very bad idea. Not going to work out well for anybody in the end of any party. So hopefully,
well, I mean, the polluting of the American political system with money is, maybe, the original sin of our lifetime. But I also just see because you've mentioned it, the goals of the Israelis and the goals of the Americans have been completely different,
They are.
And so, as you say, you're so right to talk about Israel. I don't even know that Netanyahu hasn't bitten off more than he can chew. I mean, now they're threatening the desal plants in Israel, and I mean, there could be some serious repercussions here that the Israelis weren't counting on.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's just, a supremacist attitude. It somehow did not occur to them that while they were fantasizing and salivating over the idea of an Iran war, Iran was very much aware of this and thinking, well, what are we going to do if they strike us? Like, how do we prepare? What kind of, front do we put up to make ourselves look powerful? When do we strike back? And they have been obsessing about this, for over 40 years as well. And so, yeah, that's something they really should have considered before instigating the war that we've been dreading for my entire life. So, yeah.
Links to Sarah's Substack under this video, also to her books. I recommend everything. Sarah, thank you for making time for us on Mondays. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Sarah Kendzior, everybody. Right on. Right on.
The Mark Thompson Show.
I don't want to go any further without a quick mention.
And now, your comments.
Oh, okay. I'll do that first. Lynn Shamshoyan, how about you? Thank you for a $10 super sticker. We are independent media. So those of you who have joined us via Patreon and PayPal, there are links to Patreon and PayPal under all of our video. That's the way we can plan, we can hire. And all of these things are critical in this world where, I mean, let's face it, independent media is more and more valuable. I think we have valuable conversations here, and I hope you agree. And in that spirit, thank you for your support through Patreon and PayPal. And as I say, like Lynn Shamshoyan, on a super sticker and super chats as well. Richard Delamater with a $2 super chat says, the rod of equity and mercy has smithed you. Yes, he wants the rod of equity and mercy. I promise it this week for
big shout out
for Richard Delamater later this week. You need a multiverse of stupidity to simultaneously accept both war is over and they have nothing left versus we need another 200 billion and troops. Thank you, Luis. That's so true.
Big shout out.
How do you go on and ask for $200 billion at the same time that you talk about how, hey, we're all done here, problem solved? It's absurd. That has to coexist, those two things. Here is the cost of the war. This is a real-time Iran war cost tracker. And for those just listening, it's at about $29 billion. $1 billion a day going forward. 23 days, 15 hours, and 51 minutes. And that is the Iran war cost tracker. And this is our money, and apparently it's not sufficient. $200 billion is what they want. He needs more lobster at the Pentagon, says Stropey. It's exactly right. We had that story last couple of weeks. We've had it twice about all the decadence and the spend at the Pete Hegseth-controlled Pentagon with crab legs and lobster, a shrimp cocktail fountain, millions and millions of dollars. So, a quick word before I get to Jessica Denson. Let me just...
The Mark Thompson Show.
I want to acknowledge one of our sponsor partners, Sweet 106 Bakery, and I've received many emails from you guys about how much you love it.
I've received a lot of positive letters.
I've really gotten such a response. I'm so happy. I'm delighted. Because they are a small business and run by a female entrepreneur. And she's won. She's not just a female entrepreneur. She has won Cupcake Wars twice. So when she comes up with this concoction, this confection, it is something that is amazing.
It's fantastic.
It is fantastic. And you can share in it. Sweet106bakery.com. You can see all of their best sellers. Their latest, they have the mini in addition to the normal size, and it comes in a smaller container. There's the mini spring bundle. You must. I know it. The mini spring bundle is insane.
I've never seen anything like it.
I want you to grab it. I was trying to find you. I've gotten like 5 emails from people who are super happy with Sweet 106 Bakery. So I want you to, here is somebody who, it's awesome. Thank you again. It's incredible. I'm giving it as gift. You will be astounded. So it's the perfect balance of frosting and cake. And it's all there in this container. 3.5 cupcake equivalent on the normal size, and then the 1.5 cupcake equivalent on the smaller. Sweet 106 Bakery. It's sweet like a suite of rooms. SUITE. Sweet106bakery.com. Use our discount code MARKT at checkout, and you'll get 15% off. Check off the checkout. MARKT at checkout. Sweet106bakery.com. Use the code MARKT. You'll get 15%
The Mark Thompson Show.
I'm excited always to talk to this person. She is an honest-to-goodness activist, and she has put together a plan, and it's an action plan for activism. She passionately believes that the conversation should be around impeachment. And when it comes to Donald Trump and this administration, there are myriad examples of those things that are impeachable. And for that reason, she thinks and wants you to understand that something has to be done. She's the wonderful Jessica Denson, everyone. Hello, hello. And she is host of Lights On. And also, she is the founder of the Removal Coalition. And Jessica, welcome. I know you sent up the bat beam, so I wanted to respond to you and say, please. She said, there's something going on. I need to get the word out. And so the floor is yours.
Well, Mark, thank you for having me back, as always. I think I want to start a vegan ice cream line just so you can sell it for me here on the Mark.
They have vegan options at Sweet 106 Bakery, by the way.
Do they? Okay.
Yeah, you're okay. We should send you some. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, everybody knows that No King's Day, No Kings 3.0 is coming up on this Saturday, March 28th, right? And this is expected to be the largest protest in American history. I think when you were on my show last time, I made the announcement that we at the Removal Coalition have been making a nationwide call for activists to pick up the demand of impeachment and removal this time at No Kings. to have one clear, explicit demand because frankly, you know, I look at these things from a 30,000 foot perspective. How is history going to look back on what the American people were or were not doing as their democracy went up in flames? And we thought about the fact that this is going to happen. And I couldn't, frankly, believe that they announced the third No King's Day without a concrete demand in place. And so for over a month now, we've been making that call nationwide for people to call for impeachment and removal on No King's Day. You can go to removetheregime.com. We lay out exactly what we think people should be calling for on that day so that that's what reverberates, so that the pressure's on the lawmakers, so that we are not giving cover. And honestly, as somebody very aptly said in a TikTok video, not challenging the kings, but just entertaining them. You know, we don't want to do that on this day. Too much is at stake. So in addition to that, we have come in to the nation's capital, Mark, and we are going to have a Remove the Regime rally on the National Mall on No King's Day. And we are doing this because that was not happening. There is another event that I'm sure is going to be a great event. It is not on the National Mall. It is not calling for Trump's removal. We felt like that void needed to be filled. In Washington, D.C., the messaging there had to be unmistakable. And so we will be on the National Mall right in front of the Capitol starting at 1, but we will be receiving people marching in from the other rally, receiving people marching in from Virginia. We need to send a crystal clear message to Congress on this day, especially in Washington, D.C., that they hold, that the onus is on them for what is going on in our country right now and around the world, frankly, because they are the ones with the constitutional authority to end it.
It's funny, I'm thinking back to Vietnam and the fact that there were stop the war protests right up to the White House gates virtually. I mean, they had them all over Washington. I grew up there, so I can tell you the protests were strong and they were ubiquitous, you know. And so you're right. I mean, it's almost odd to me to learn from you that the mall was absent of any, with this message anyway. So it's, again, I always marvel at how quickly you pull things together. I don't know how you do it, but this is your latest cry and an important one. But sort of on the heels of this general message, there be a specific ask, is your point.
There's gotta be, Mark. This is, you know, I hear other people talking about No Kings, and they're like, you know, I even saw a post out yesterday. Somebody said, don't expect everything to change on this day. It's not a day that, you know, supposed to change everything, but it's about community building, and it's about this, and it's about that. And all of that is great. But what I am constantly trying to get people to do is like, understand your own agency more immediately and more fully. Because the fact that we have been drug out this long and that we have been made to think that either we have to wait for midterms or, you know, that Democrats have no power to use right now in the minority, which is a total fallacy, or that we can just kind of do a piecemeal approach to this sabotage of democracy instead of rooting out the criminals that are running it, is such an insult to our individual integrity, to our dignity, to our human and divine rights, to every really rightful agency that we have as we the people. And so, you know, it doesn't have to be just a community building day. This can be a day that literally sends shockwaves around the world, that the American people are finally standing up for themselves and demanding that these people go.
Yeah, it's interesting. We can feel overmatched, and we just were talking to Sarah Kendzior about this, you know, the way in which the Mueller report was sort of parked. There was a lot in the Mueller report. There should have been way more in the Mueller report, but there was this kind of narrow investigation, but still it yielded a lot. And instead of doing anything with it, Congress just sort of parked it. And you ended up with an investigation and proceeding associated with an impeachment that had nothing to do with the stuff that were the Mueller report replete with examples of impeachable stuff, and it just kind of lay there. So it's interesting. So my point is simply, you can feel overmatched. You can feel like, you know, just nothing ever happens. You know, we had with this and nothing happened, and we have that and nothing happens. This guy did this and it's openly corrupt and nothing happens. So I like that, you know, at minimum, you are giving people, as you say, agency to do something. You don't have to just sit by and go, well, nothing ever happens.
Absolutely. And that's a very good point, because let's talk about protests with results. At the Removal Coalition, the Remove the Regime protest that we held back in November, I've been reminding people of this on my show and on social media, as a condition of participating in that Remove the Regime, I asked Representative Al Green, even the hero that he is, okay, unitary, solitary member of Congress who has actually been willing to take a stand on impeachment. I asked even him, as a condition of coming, to please commit to filing new articles of impeachment and forcing a vote on them. He made that commitment because of our movement, because of that mass protest that we did in DC. And when he followed through with that promise in December of last year, listen to this, Mark, and we've talked about this before, there was a 77% surge in support for impeachment when he forced that vote. 77%. That is a massive, massive metric of success. Imagine if every protest were demanding articles filed and votes forced. Every single protest. Imagine if every protest organizer refused to allow a member of Congress to speak at their protests unless they committed to filing and forcing votes on articles of impeachment.
Oh, that's
This is really,
great.
Mark, it's
Yeah.
it's all about acknowledging and understanding our own leverage and using it, and not compromising for less than what we're entitled to. If that were happening over and over again, that 77% would just be ticking up and up and up, and we would be able to impeach this man successfully.
Jacqueline says, as of 1980, the narrative that the protests from the people didn't change a thing was predominant at the universities, as they either fired tenured left-wing professors or let them age out. That's interesting. Yeah, I mean, so those things coexisted. I didn't realize that. Shut everything down for a day if they don't listen once a week, says Michael Hernandez. Yeah, it's hard to do that. That's something that is a little difficult, I think. I don't know. Anyway.
Mass boycotts and the shit. That's such a heavy lift. And listen, I'm all for it. People come to me all the time. They're like, Jessica, when are we going to do a mass strike? When are we going to do it? The thing is, people, you don't notice, maybe you do notice, people have been calling for these for the past year. They're like, we're going to do it on this day. We're going to do it on this day. And you do see a decent amount of people participate, but to get mass buy-in where it actually has a concrete, tangible effect on commerce and business in this country, it is a heavy lift.
Yeah. All right, so this again is a call to lawmakers demanding Trump's impeachment and removal. And you can find all the information on Jessica Denson. Give me the website. We'll have it under this video, but what is it?
Sure. RemoveTheRegime.com. RemoveTheRegime.com. And if you click on the poster for the DC action, that'll take you to the Mobilize page where you can register with us there. It's all at RemoveTheRegime.com. We also, if you would like, can pitch in to help us pay for this. As always, these things cost a lot of money. Stages, sound equipment, the whole deal. It's like thousands and thousands of dollars. So if you can help us, we'd love that.
I don't know how you do it, but I love that you do it. Jessica Denson, again, it's removetheregime.com. Thanks for keeping us posted. We're here for you anytime.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you so much.
See you, Jessica. Bravo. Bravo.
The Mark Thompson Show.
I am not done. I am going to bring you a conversation related to what's happening at the nation's airports in a moment. Got our aviation expert in the house. But before I get to that, I do need to address
The Mark Thompson Show.
Something that has to be a glaringly obvious thing to all of you who are looking in at this moment or listening across Spotify, iHeart Radio, what is it? iPod, iPad, whatever. Apple Podcasts, the iApple system, whatever it is. You no doubt noticed that my breath is minty fresh.
Oh, you just woo.
I know. It's a little overwhelming. I took 3 Zelmans before the show started. Zelmans, ZELMINS.com. On the outside, it is a coating of peppermint or spearmint, and it's a freshness that just explodes in your mouth. But that's not even the magic of Zelmans. That's just that's like the introductory opening act to what Zelmans does. has, Zellman's does, two ways in which it improves your breath. On the inside is a tiny capsule. And as that tiny capsule breaks down in your stomach, it interacts and nullifies those things that cause bad breath. So
What?
I know. The science is amazing.
The science is ridiculous.
No, the science works. I'm telling you, they actually paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to establish this science. This natural parsley seed oil and mint, it interacts with the things in your gut, and it produces revelations that you will experience. You know where a lot of the research happened, Kim, was right there in the office of laboratory of Dr. Emil Schofhausen.
Emil Schofhausen.
The third. Yeah. That's right. Anyway, this incredible research has led to this dual action power. And dual action power will lead you to not having to worry about bad breath.
I've never seen anything like it.
So I want you to jump on it. Zellmans.com. Use our discount code MARK-T. You'll get 15% off. I use it. I take 3 at a time. On the outside, the powerful mint coating, and on the inside, the parsley seed oil targeting the source of the odor, which is in your stomach. Zellmans.com. Again, MARK-T at checkout for 15% off. Zellmans.com.
I've told you it's never easy being in this business.
The Mark Thompson Show.
There was a major incident at LaGuardia Airport. Shut the airport down for a time. A collision between a truck on the runway and an aircraft. What's the state of the state when it comes to everything going on at the airport? There you see the Air Canada front of the fuselage having hit this truck and the damage done. Kim, was anyone? I think there were 2 fatalities. Am I right about that?
Yeah, there were 2 fatalities. There were a lot of people injured, at least 49 people injured as well. The airport was closed for hours and hours. It reopened a couple hours ago, New York's LaGuardia Airport.
Let's bring on the former CEO of oh my God. EasyJet. Sorry. I had a mental glitch. You know, my mind just goes off at 4 o'clock Eastern time. It just stops for a time, and you just caught the glitch. But he was there. One of the founders of EasyJet joins us. He's a regular check-in for us on matters involving aviation. Please welcome Patrick Weil. Hi, Patrick.
Hey, Mark. How are you today?
Patrick, tell me the situation that seems as though it's fraught with danger generally, where these planes have to pursue runways that are also traversed by these trucks. The Air Canada plane obviously hitting one of these trucks. How does this happen?
Yeah, well, that was a Class A fire truck that hit the airplane, and I just watched the actual sequence on replay. And it's astonishing to me how this happened because, well, first of all, you have a crew in these trucks typically of about 7 to 8 people. So you got eyes looking all over the place. They usually do, so that they don't hit things like, you know, baggage carts and other trucks and airplanes and wings and things like that. And the fact that they were cleared to cross the runway at the exact same moment an airplane was landing is astonishing, absolutely astonishing. And I think the air traffic controller is probably going to be at fault for this. However, what was the firemen looking at when they cross the runway? They usually, you know, they also have cameras in there, and they also have proximity warnings. So like if you get too close to the car in front of you, you get a beep, 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 beep. You know, so that should have all been happening in the fire truck before they even tried to cross the runway. They were given permission to, I listened to the air traffic control tapes, and they were given permission to cross the runway to assist another, it was a United plane that was having some kind of issue as well, maybe a fuel leak or something like that. Before we went on air, I just wanted to let you know a Colombian Air Force C-130 crashed on takeoff with 110 people aboard, and it looks like that was looks like a complete devastation for that airplane. That just happened about half an hour before I came on your show.
And that's a military aircraft, right?
Yeah, it's a Lockheed C-130 Hercules, and mostly used for troop transports or paratroopers or some kind of training.
And it crashed in Colombia, from what I'm seeing. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
110 on board. So that sounds to me like a unit of a military of some kind. We're doing exercises, and it doesn't look too good here for them.
There's something that is emerging as, and I see this repeatedly. I wonder if you could just comment on it.
Sure.
It's emerging as a kind of thought, and it's this. Obi-Wan says, I try to tell people it isn't safe to fly under this administration. Is there something about this administration that's making things more dangerous? Or give us a dispassionate, apolitical, just a respectable view of exactly where we are in terms of safety under these guys.
Well, most people in aviation are apolitical because you always have some sort of, politician or something going on where you have to sort of stay neutral on this sort of thing. I would say that it's just an oversaturation of not having enough air traffic controllers is definitely something attributable to that. And I just saw the press conference before going on air here to look at the it was Mayor Mandami, it was Duffy, and all the people were standing there together. It was ironic that they wouldn't even speculate on what is obvious. Well, we have to leave that to the NTSB and blah, blah, blah. I understand all that. But, I mean, there's just some blatant, ridiculous things that happen that cause that crash. It should never happen in any circumstance. And New York is a problem. LaGuardia is a problematic airport, always has been.
LaGuardia is, really?
Oh, yeah. Short runways. And the runways cross each other, so they may have a plane taking off on one going one way, and then they have another plane landing in a different direction, but they also intersect. So what happens a lot of times is one plane can't get off the runway or get out of the way, and you see a lot of planes go around by the tower, diverting them off the runway. And then there's a lot of places where field encroachment and the runways, the way they intersect, there's just a lot of mass, like trucks and things are running all around the place, carts, and I mean it's a mind-boggling experience to go to LaGuardia. It's a very old airport. It was built in the 30s, and the footprint of the airport really hasn't changed in about 50 years.
Yeah, and there have been a lot of near misses at LaGuardia. Patrick's absolutely right. So, I mean, again, this is sort of the battle we're fighting with the, with the troops we've been given type thing. And in this case, you have overmatched, perhaps, air traffic controllers for the kind of traffic there is and for the physical configuration of the airport. Let me just press you a little bit on the point that was mentioned by a viewer listener, and that is about how things are, not as safe under this administration. Let's leave LaGuardia out. When you look at National Airport and the way that helicopter hit that commercial airliner, and I'm not, I have no idea, so I'm asking you, so please don't think I'm simply following up and asking you, I mean, were things safer under Biden, or were things safer under Obama? Can you go back, or is it just the numbers keep increasing? So whoever is the president and whatever administration there is as we move forward is going to have to handle this increased traffic that's associated with aviation.
Well, the resolution that came about recently is that helicopters are banned from the area within a 5-mile radius of National Airport.
Which should have probably been the case long ago, yeah?
Way before, yeah. And the fact that the Pentagon's there, and then they have the Marine helicopter bases right across the river from there, created this comfort zone, or too comfortable. And it should have never, and I think the other thing that's been happening now is they're trying to get everybody on the same radio channel, that is, so that they know where these things are. And I used to fly airplanes all the time, and you would hear military planes. Sometimes when you fly from LA to Santa Barbara, you actually have to talk to Point Mugu Naval Air Station to get your air traffic clearance. So we need to get everybody on the same page. That's the biggest problem with military versus civilian traffic. And I mean, there's some reasons for that. But it's mostly exercise areas that you probably wouldn't want to fly into anyway. Out in the Channel Islands, there's a number of military facilities out there. And most civilians don't venture out.
Sure, it becomes an issue less in those areas than it does in some of these metropolitan areas. Let me ask you, I only have another minute, so let me ask you quickly. This is kind of maybe in an area sort of adjacent to your expertise, so pardon me if you don't know. But, the TSA problems with them not being paid, and this is week after week, and more are dropping out, more and more are calling in sick, et cetera. And so they are overmatched by the demand. There are lines that are running 3.5 hours. Not infrequently are we seeing reports along those lines. And now Donald Trump, who's our president, has moved ICE agents in to supposedly help TSA. It seems like a tortured logic. But can you speak to this whole TSA situation?
Well, in my opinion, we pay a 10% airline tax every time we buy an airline ticket. And some of that is now, like the air traffic controllers, they're going to pay them from that tax. I think the same thing should happen with the TSA agents. In some of the smaller airports like Pittsburgh have gone back to private screening companies, actually, with TSA supervision, meaning that you only need a dozen TSA agents when you needed 100 before, and they can supervise the people that look at the x-rays and the baggage and so forth. I think that's a more practical way to do this than rather having all these federal employees, there. And I mean, it's a huge expense. But the other thing is that I don't think it's efficient. I think there's a lot of complacency and a lot of attrition anyway, because it's just people get tired of it. They only make $35,000 a year. It's not a glamorous job by any measure. And there are companies like Menzies and like your security companies like Wackenhut and whatever. They are more nimble. They can do that. If the government would allow that to happen, that would be a much more amicable resolution to this whole mess. As a matter of fact, it's hard to have it hold it out there because this, that, or the other thing doesn't get agreed on in the Congress. Shouldn't affect people's safety in any way, shape, or form. Safety is number one. And if you talk to anybody in aviation that's been there for a while, that's the same thing they're going to say. And another side note real quick, I was looking at Cuba. Cuba is still operating as normal. I just watched an American Airlines flight land in Havana. So however they're getting, they seem to be getting their power to run the airport. And I'm watching the overflights, and there's like 100 overflights right now over Cuba. So apparently there's something, at least they have power to manage the airports and the air traffic system. It's interesting.
Yeah, that's wild. That's a great footnote to it all. Thank you. Patrick, thanks for responding to our call. When we need you, we jump on the hotline, and you're there for us. Thank you. I look forward to our next conversation, although I hope it's not associated with any kind of accident. Exactly.
Yeah, it seems to be always something, right?
Yeah, but it is always something. So I appreciate you being around. Patrick Weil, everybody. Thanks, Patrick. Right on, my friend.
The Mark Thompson Show.
I am, sadly, we've got to wrap up around here, Kim. I can't, I'd like to stay, but I'm.
Put that coffee down.
I'm sorry, it's Coachella Valley coffee. I do love it. Can't get enough of it. Let me quickly check in on a couple of comments.
And now, your comments.
Appreciate them always. Appreciate them after the fact. Appreciate them whenever you leave them and in real time here in the chat live. Louis says, IPA Pete, that's Pete Exit. IPA Pete should start a GoFundMe. And given how well his alternative Super Bowl halftime show went, have Kid Rock organize a, quote, bomb aid festival to cover the war costs. Yeah, that $200 billion request. Thank you, Louise.
Big shout out.
Always with a, the Blue Spark comment, found this. You would need to fly every day for 103,239 years to, statistically anyway, experience a fatal commercial aviation accident. Wow. That's an extraordinary.
What?
I know, that's an extraordinary statistic. That's a statistic right out of Dr. Emil Schopausen. You know, that's Emil Schopausen the third. Yeah, he does that, a lot of that statistical work. The FBI and special prosecutors have to follow the AG's rules. Yeah, right. I mean, I think the AG does lay it down. That's why Bill Barr's handling of the Mueller report was so critical, and why not only did Bill Barr park the Mueller report, we were talking about Robert Murller, who died over the weekend, but also because Mueller essentially gave them a lot of the stuff there to follow up in terms of obstruction of justice, et cetera. And Mueller, gave them the report, but Barr went out before the report was public and essentially dry cleaned the release, the press release. Said there's nothing to see here. And so Trump was able to say, see, no collusion, nothing wrong. And then, of course, the Mueller report stated many things that were quite collusive, as it turns out. If they can afford to pay ICE agents, why can't they afford to pay TSA agents, asked Sandy. I don't understand. It's a separate appropriation. That's why. So, again, I'll remind you, the Senate voted on specifically funding TSA, and the Republicans, 48 of them, voted against it. So, ICE agents seen terrorizing a woman and child at SFO. Yeah, that's the video that we showed you earlier. So, Mark Mueller always looked like he was ill and being shielded, like Biden, to me. I think you're right, Spamlets. I think you're exactly right. I mean, we saw him when he testified. He was clearly, not in good shape. So I think you're absolutely right that Mueller, there was a mythology built up around Mueller. And when we actually saw him, it was like the Wizard of Oz. It was like, oh my God, this guy is not in good shape. But as it turned out, the report, which really did have damning evidence that could have been followed and could have even produced an impeachment and potential removal, it was all just ignored and parked. So that is that. Thank you all. What is it? What is it, Kim?
Just mentioning ICE is at 14 airports, and the border security czar says there are more to come.
Oh, yeah. ICE is everywhere. ICE is the place that we'll find peace and harmony with all. ICE makes everything better.
No.
ICE is, ICE, you understand, is operating on a budget that is bigger than the FBI's, okay? ICE is a bloated agency where a bunch of people are given almost no training. They pick up a badge, a gun, and a lot of power, and now they're in the airports. It is bad. That is the state this day. Tomorrow, David K. Johnston. We have a big week of guests, so...
I'm Shadow Stevens for The Mark Thompson Show. Bye-bye.
Dr. Stephen Hassan tomorrow as well.
Oh, that's right. The cult expert, Stephen Hassan. Thank you, Mondo. Thank you, Kim. Thank you, Tony. Until tomorrow, bye-bye.
Oh, that's me, right? Sorry.
Yes. Thank you.
Wait a minute.